Imagine walking into a world where every newspaper prints the same headline, every radio plays the same song, and every book praises the same leader. A world where the only truth is what the state allows you to know, and where listening to the wrong station or speaking the wrong words could mean prison or death. This isn't a dystopian novel, it's daily life in North Korea. Today, we're going to explore how this small, isolated country became one of the most heavily censored societies in human history. It's a story that stretches back over a century, a story of colonization, war, ideology, and control. And it's a story of how censorship, once unleashed, can spiral so far that reality itself is rewritten. Our story begins before North Korea even existed. In 1910, Korea was annexed by Japan. The Japanese Empire imposed strict censorship across the peninsula. Korean newspapers were shut down, the Korean language was suppressed, and history books were rewritten to glorify Japan. Koreans were forced to adopt Japanese names, worship at a Shinto shrine, and study a history that erased their own. One Korean elder later recalled, "We were taught that we are Japanese, not Korean. Speaking our own tongue was dangerous. Reading forbidden books could mean prison." This air of repression planted a seed, the association between control of information and political survival. For young Koreans like Kim Il-sung, who later became North Korea's founding leader, censorship was not abstract. It was the air they breathed. When Japan surrendered in 1945, Korea was freed, but divided. The Soviets occupied the north, the Americans the south. In the Soviet-controlled zone, Kim Il-sung, a guerrilla fighter against Japan, rose quickly with Moscow support. From the beginning, censorship played a central role. Newspapers, radio broadcasts, and the schools in the north all carried a single message. Kim was the liberator, the true father of the Korean people. Competing voices, Christians, nationalists, and those sympathetic to the South, were silenced, exiled, or executed. It was during these years that censorship became not just a tool of governance, but the foundation of an emerging state identity. The Korean War was catastrophic. The peninsula was devastated, millions were killed, and families were torn apart. For Kim Il-sung, the war was also an opportunity. He framed it as proof that imperialists and traitors were everywhere, and that absolute unity under his leadership could protect the nation. Censorship now served two goals: to glorify Kim as a near mythical protector, and to seal off North Korea from outside influence, especially from the capitalist South and the United States. During the war, radios were fixed to receive only government channels. Foreign books and papers were banned. After the war, these restrictions were never lifted. North Korea had become a society where information flowed in only one direction, from the top downwards. After the war, Kim Il-sung built something unique in the communist world: a dynasty rooted in the personality cult. Censorship was central. State media portrayed Kim not just as a leader, but as a godlike figure. Textbooks describe him as the savior of Korea. Poems, songs, and films praised his wisdom and courage. One defector later said, "As a child, I did not know anything about the outside world. All I knew was that Kim Il-sung made the sun rise, the rain fall, and the crops grow." Every photograph of Kim was sacred. If one appeared in a newspaper, people were required to cut it out carefully, never folding it. If an image was damaged, it could mean punishment. This total control over imagery and language cemented Kim's absolute authority. Truth itself became inseparable from loyalty. As the Cold War intensified, censorship in North Korea grew even more severe. While East Germany could at least pick up Western TVs across the border, North Koreans were completely sealed off. Radios and TVs were pre-tuned to government stations. Owning an unregistered typewriter required state approval. Foreign books were forbidden. Even words could be censored. South Korea wasn't South Korea. It was the puppet regime. The United States was not just America, it was the sworn enemy. This wasn't just propaganda. It was a linguistic prison. To speak differently was to think differently, and thinking differently was dangerous. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 was a disaster for North Korea. Soviet aid vanished, and combined with mismanagement and natural disasters, the country spiraled into famine. Hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions, died. During this crisis, censorship tightened even further. The regime insisted the famine didn't exist. Instead, it was called a heroic struggle where citizens were expected to endure starvation for the nation's survival. Reports of food aid from the United Nations were rewritten to credit Kim Jong-il, Kim Il-sung's son and successor. Even in the face of mass death, the state's narrative could not be questioned. But cracks appeared. Some North Koreans, desperate for food, slipped across the border into China, where they caught glimpses of outside reality. South Korean dramas, foreign news, consumer goods, smuggled DVDs, and radios began to trickle back. The regime responded with brutal crackdowns, public executions for those caught with forbidden media. Yet, the very existence of this underground culture showed the limits of censorship, even in North Korea. When Kim Jong-un took power in 2011, many wondered if the young leader would loosen restrictions. Instead, censorship only became more sophisticated. The internet, for example, is off limit to ordinary citizens. Only a state-run intranet is available, filled with propaganda, but no connection to the global web. Smartphones exist, but every app, every call, every text is monitored. Radios and TV remain sealed to state channels. Foreign media is still punishable by death. At the same time, Kim Jong-un has embraced modern propaganda, flashy videos, carefully staged photos, even social media accounts targeting foreign audiences. The regime knows censorship isn't just about blocking information, it's about flooding the world with its own story. What does this level of censorship mean for the ordinary North Koreans? It means growing up believing your country is the most prosperous on earth, even while famine rages. It means never hearing an unfiltered foreign voice. It means fearing that a misplaced word, or even a wrong facial expression, when the leader's name is spoken, could bring punishment. Defectors often describe the shock of discovering the outside world. One woman recalled seeing a South Korean drama for the first time. They had food on the table, cars on the street, smiles. I realized everything I had been told was a lie. Censorship in North Korea doesn't just control knowledge, it reshapes reality itself. Why has North Korean censorship lasted so long when other regimes collapsed? Several reasons. Isolation. Unlike East Germans and Soviets, North Koreans have almost no direct contact with outsiders. Dynasty. The Kim family has turned censorship into a hierarchy system of control. Fear. Generations have lived under the knowledge that dissent leads to prison camps. Or worse. Censorship has become self-reinforcing. It is no longer just a government policy. It is a way of life, deeply woven into society. From Japanese colonial rule to the dynasty of the Kims, censorship in North Korea has been a century in the making. What began as an instrument of survival became a machine of control, so powerful that it shaped not just what people say, but what they believe, what they imagine, even what they dream. It is, perhaps, the most extreme example of how censorship can spiral out of control. And yet, even the darkest systems, cracks appear. A smuggled DVD, a whispered story, a glimpse across the border. These small breaches remind us that truth has a way of slipping through. North Korea remains sealed, but history tells us no wall of silence lasts forever. Does this story sound familiar to you? Think about it. When Kim Jong-un took power in 2011, many thought that he would loosen restrictions. Sound familiar? But this was not to be true. Every picture, every photo op of him was carefully staged, almost like when someone had a Bible at a church and removed all the protesters. Carefully staged. Even social media accounts were targeted in North Korea. Think about what is happening now with TikTok having to be bought by a US company. Is it about silencing a foreign media, or is it really about national safety? North Koreans grew up believing their country was the most prosperous on earth. They say the same thing about the US. So, when you really see it, are we that much different than North Korea? Or are we just on an earlier stage from where they are now? This has been a recording of the Continuum, brought to you by the Political Besties Network.